Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and I thank you for coming. You'll see on your screen right now an invitation to join me on Pear Deck. I have made this an interactive presentation with opportunities for you to write and to draw. Not that I don't want to hear your voices, I'd love to, but I just want to give you some options as far as responding to some of the things. If you are not comfortable managing more than one browser at a time, I know it can kind of get overwhelming. I just closed a whole bunch of tabs myself because of that. But I'd love to have you join me. You go to joinpd.com and then you can see the code on your screen, QFN, click flashlights neatly, BYV, bother young violas. And I'm going to wait just a minute or so more for you to join, though you can join in at any time. My name is Barb Kurtz, and as Suzanne said, my colleagues, or the three musketeers, as John put a little bit ago, Natalie and Wilma are with me as well. We teach in Meadville Area Senior High School, which is in the northwest corner of Pennsylvania. My topic today is social mercy and reaching the unreachable. And I'm going to wait just another minute or so and then again close it up and you'll be able to see more of the screen. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I'm assuming as you that because we work in the real world, we encounter some kids who really stretch us and who really need us to stretch for them. I've got 7 students connected. If you want to join in, you'll still be able to, but I'm going to go ahead and close the join code so that we can get started on the presentation. And you should be able to see now my screen with our names on it. And I'm going to go ahead and advance to the second screen. And in a minute, I'm going to invite you to draw. It says, let's admit it, we've all been there. Now, I'm not sure what you think of when you think of there, but as teachers in school, I'm assuming that you've been in really full rooms, that you've had kids who got put in your class because they just needed an elective. They had a hole in their schedule and you were the hole filler. And maybe you ended up with a disruptor or an agitator. Maybe you had a fighter or a bully. Maybe you had a criminal. And I'm not trying to classify kids as much as say, you've probably all experienced something like this. There was one year that my last class, I had every mix possible of kids in there. And it was one of my most challenging years. It also ended up being a very good year. It was a good stretch for me. Maybe when you see this picture, you think of some of the dropouts you've had, the kids that we missed. Doesn't it break your heart every time we lose one to dropping out? Maybe you've had a couple of kids who've died from drug overdose or suicide. Doesn't that just break your heart? So I know that you care. We all know that's what we do. We're teachers. We care and we care deeply. And we want to give kids chances. But there are days, though, when it's rough. So I picked this picture because you could see so many responses, that person in there. Feel free to draw a picture if you want. If you're not an artist, it's okay. If you'll notice, no one can see anything on your screen. Everything you do today will be anonymous. You're an anonymous butterfly, hen, boar. You also can choose not to show anything or say anything at all. I'm totally okay with that. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next page. And I wanted you to know what I was thinking. For a purpose, I want to discuss with you today a difficult topic. And that's, what about those unreachable kids? I want to demonstrate empathy and have us demonstrate empathy with each other, offer some suggestions, help you create a support system, strategize a plan if necessary. My agenda is simply this. I'm going to go through some of the challenges we face, define the terms social justice and social mercy. We're going to look at some successes and failures, how we try again, how we encourage each other, and then things that you can take with you when you leave. Why me? I am by no means the expert. I haven't written a book on this. I don't have a doctoral degree. It's something that's deeply on my heart, though. As like you, I have a passion for kids. I'm not always successful, and the failures, they weigh on me. I'm sure that they weigh on you too. Maybe you see a face as I talk about this. And I don't have a magic wand. There's not a simple remedy. I just want to discuss it with you. What are some of the actions and reactions that we take? The operating guidelines I put on the screen are the same ones you'd ask your kids. So I just shared with you maybe something that you've used in your classroom. No names, please. And obviously, this isn't a time to share anybody's rap sheet or otherwise. Make sure you feel free to share positive and negative aspects, but try not to linger on the negative. Keep your comments brief, so if anybody else wants to participate, they can. And then hopefully by the end, you can identify one valuable takeaway or strategy or perspective. And I'm going to invite you to continue this conversation. I don't have all the answers, but I'd love to discuss it with you. So at the end, I'll share my contact info again, and I'd love to hear from you. So on the next screen that you should be able to see now, I have check marks at the bottom of your screen that you can drag. Have you been there ever? Have you been there this year, this week, maybe most of your career? Have you had students who challenge your authority? Have you had students who wreak havoc in your classroom? Have you had students that disrupt? And I'm going to show you the responses on this one because it's check marks, they're anonymous. Look at this, we're all in this together. We have certainly been there. In fact, I don't know about you, if I could do a show of hands right now, I had one of those days yesterday. Oh my goodness, you know, and we all have them. And those are three things that are something that if we could wave the magic wand, we would. So let's talk about this. Okay, thank you for responding. I appreciate it. Don't you love Pear Deck? So on my next screen, I have the question that was kind of my driving question in doing this. What is the role of social justice or social mercy in an age of social justice? And I'm going to start by defining social justice. So you have a text box here. What I'd love for you to do is type in one word or two, what do you think of when you think of social justice as it applies to school? And again, no one can see your responses but me. And if I share some of them, it will just be anonymously. So go ahead and fill in any terms you want. I have an anonymous pterodactyl, thank you, and an anonymous squirrel typing. I've got an anonymous ladybug typing, thank you very much. Good, there's a hippo joining in. Thank you. Great, I'm gonna give you a few more seconds to type, and we're just gonna keep using this text box for a minute or two. So you feel free to add on, just keep going, or you can wipe out at any time and go back up. But I've got great comments already. Equal treatment or equal opportunity as students being recognized that they matter, and things like that. Those are great responses. I've got some more typing. Thank you so much. There's a butterfly joining in. Okay, and I want you to continue the thought in that, how does this play out in school as opposed to in society? So feel free to jump that in there. And then if there are some significant words that come to mind, go ahead and add those in. And again, you're completely anonymous and I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking here in a little bit. Okay. Thank you. Wow, I've got lots of responses now. All right. How does social justice play out in society or in school? And obviously, because we're school teachers, that's our primary focus. Excellent, thank you. Now, if you're not familiar with Pear Deck, I want you to know that I can type you a personal response. When I use this with my students, I can use this to ask a follow-up question. If we're doing a grammar practice, I could correct their grammar, etc. I can star and feature some responses and leave some unshown. Okay, great responses. So let me move on. And I have a question, and I hope you don't mind my question, but do you ever see, and I'm thinking you do from a classroom perspective, where there's some holes where the social justice just doesn't quite fit? And I love this. I see support in society, but sometimes they don't get as much support in school. That's a great comment. Thank you, Pterodactyl. Do you see some holes in it in how it comes into this school? And I don't mean to leave a lot of quiet time, but I do want to give you a chance to think. There you go. Excellent. Great comments. I don't see anything in here that's completely personal. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some of these just because I want you to see, well, for one thing, I'm an advocate of Pear Deck and I love it. But for another, because people are thinking the same sorts of things as you. So I'm going to go ahead and click on show responses. Okay, and again, as I scroll through them, there's no names or anything. So there's no worries here, but you can see some of the things that people have posted. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to undo that. And I want you to know that I see some holes too. Social justice has at heart a really noble purpose, but sometimes opportunity doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be what you want. Sometimes when we apply something in a blanket format, it misses some people. And I'm sure that you know that even in schools, rules or things, policies are applied even to teachers, and it doesn't necessarily hit what it's supposed to hit. Sometimes it just covers up bigger problems. Sometimes we assume that the band-aid of social justice is going to fix things, but it doesn't always fix it. And at the end of the day, sometimes we're left with some really challenging kids in our classes. I have a definition from a dictionary, but it's right on what you guys have said, so I'm not going to read it to you, but I did want you to know where the image came from. I'm sure that you know the blindfolded justice image that's there in the picture. Her blindfold represents objectivity and impartiality, that justice should be meted out without fear or favor, regardless of money, wealth, or power. She holds a scale that represents the weighing of evidence, and the evidence has to be weighed on its own merit. And that's like a pro or con, innocent or guilty, or just whatever measurement there is. And the sword represents punishment, and we're not going to focus on that. I just wanted you to know that was the rest of her symbolism there. And then there's a snake under her foot, which I didn't notice before, but the snake represents evil and lies. And the book that she's standing on is considered the law from which justice is administered. So I found that really interesting. I learned something getting ready for that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next page, and I've got the same question. I am using the term social mercy. How would you define the term social mercy, or how would you define mercy? And specifically, how it plays out in school, but just in general. Thank you for joining and participating. And feel free to unmute yourself if you have a comment or a question, throw it in the chat. If I miss it, Natalie or Wilma will make sure I catch it. What great words. I love them. I'm going to wait another minute or so, and then I'd love to show these words to you. If at any point you want to write something in some of my questions and you don't want me to share it, if you just put that right in the comment, I can make sure that yours is not featured on the screen. You know, just kind of give you the more freedom to say what you would like to say. Excellent. What great words. Good. So I want you to think about that. And then I'm not looking for names here. Like I said earlier, no names, please. But do you picture students in your mind when you think of this word mercy? So just keep that in mind as we go on. And I'm going to go ahead and show you some of these because they're terrific responses. Forgiving, being able to look past the sins and seeing a person as a person rather than a behavior problem. Offering grace repeatedly to all. My notes page is in the way, so I can't quite read that one all the way. Giving grace, there we go. The word empathy, equal chances for everyone, leniency for those who are in need and love, and then compassion, which is one of the biggest words that I associate with this. Thank you. Great job. So this is my big guiding principle for now. We're all in the same boat. We have challenging students, and our response is the variable. And again, no names, But I know that probably when I say challenging students, kids come to mind for right now or in years past. And I don't know which that would be. I'm sorry, you can't see the answers. Was everybody able to see the answers on that last page?
No,
Nobody at all? Uh-oh. Well,
I didn't see them either.
I saw them,
I
but
saw them also.
it was on the Zoom screen, so you have to
Okay.
distinguish
Oh.
between being on Pear Deck and being on the Zoom screen.
right. I
Should we-
apologize.
Should we be on the Zoom screen? Do we have to go back and forth from the Zoom screen to the one we write on?
If you want to just stay on the one you write on, that's fine.
Okay.
If you want to flip to the Zoom screen, I'll tell you when I'm going to show something if you want to flip to it. I
Okay.
apologize. Yeah, I should have said that at the beginning. Right. So thank you for pointing that out. And so I have here, and again, feel free not to answer this question, but is anybody thinking of a student? Anybody come to mind a story of a success? Because you know what? We need those. Those are the ones that get us back up on Monday morning. Thank you. Anonymous Pterodactyls writing. And if someone wants to share a story, you are welcome to unmute yourself to share it. But sometimes these are really personal. And I want to just get you thinking. My next question is, have you had a failure? Have you had that kid that you missed? Like you tried and you just couldn't get it? Yeah, great. I love it. Look at these answers. One of the things that I love about when I get together with other teachers is that you know that their hearts are like yours. They're beaten the same way and that you care so much for the kids. Very good. And feel free to share out loud if you'd like. Feel free to type or just kind of sit and watch. I'm going to go ahead and show the responses. So if you want to flip to the Zoom screen to see it, you can. But I'll read them to you too, if that helps. I've been able to connect with very troubled students, but it almost made them act out even more. This happened twice. Very gifted boys, but very troubled. Absolutely. I think probably you've got some head nodding in the background from some other people too. I asked students to meet with me away from the classroom and we talked. Sometimes that helps. Thank you. A student who struggled to get along with many, but we were able to get on the same page. Yeah, that's when you find that connector. Thank you. Strategies of mindful communication, share appropriate and applicable personal experience, let them know that they're not alone. Don't they sometimes feel like that they're alone? Yeah, lost all patience, been there, done that. Absolutely. Thank you. This is my 30th year teaching, and I have had a large number of failures and successes, both that will stick in my mind, I think, through my retirement. One that's recent, I had a young man who just graduated a couple of years ago, but I swear I was going to pull all of my hair out before we got him to graduation, but we did. Along the way, we had a couple of stops through probation for some dumb decisions that he made. He almost failed a class, so we stayed after school one day to do a cooking project for an hour and a half. But you know what? He graduated and he got a job. And the last I knew is he was still working. And those are the kinds of stories that keep us going, aren't they? So here's my next page, and feel free to share or not. And I have a story for you. But have you had one of those that didn't go the way you wanted it to go? And I'm assuming that we're all going to say yes. If you've been teaching even for a month, you've had those. Great answer, Hippo. I see that. I don't know, can you folks see who you are? If I say great job, Hippo, do you know who I'm talking to?
No.
No, okay. Oh yes, there it is. I'm going to feature one answer real quick, okay, because this is one of the things that I started out with, and this is the anonymous pterodactyl. Part of the problem was he was forced into Spanish class and he really hated it, right? We've all had those kids, right? And so like, how do we do it? And you've got it here. We couldn't connect, lots of effort. Sometimes it's our reaction. Very good. While you keep typing, if there's something, I hope I'm not making this too depressing for you, but I just want us to go through. We've all been there. We're in this together. There was a boy I tried so hard with all year long to connect with. And it just seemed like every effort was rebuffed. And sometimes, you know, right at the end of the year when they're feeling reflective, they're graduating or whatever, they come back and they're like, hey, I'm sorry, I was a jerk. And thank you for all your work. And now this student walked past my room on his way out of his last day of high school. And he stuck his face in the window of my door and just went, oh. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. I'll never forget you now. But it made me sad just that I never was able to get over that. You're right. Someone's using the word tragedy right now. Yep. Sometimes these kids have so much on their plate that no matter how much we try, we can't connect with them. Except that you just don't know years down the road. I love this one. I learned to find what makes students click and not give up on anyone. And that's what we want to do. We just want to not give up on anyone. Great job. So I'm going to go over some things that I'm assuming that we've got as common ground, but just some strategies that I've found over the years that work. One of them is that we need to have some clear classroom expectations. In fact, we were talking about this word this morning, but I don't remember why. But let's look at this list. Limited expectations that are positively stated, that are clear and consistently implemented. The routine sometimes is our troubled students' best advocate. When they know what to expect, they relax a little bit more. That's not 100% of the time, but it certainly helps. One of the things I've found is I've tried to write rules for every scenario, and I'm sure you know what I went through. It doesn't work that way. If you try every scenario, you're just going to fail miserably. So keep them short, keep them simple, communicate them early and often. And then you're going to hear me say this a lot for the next few slides. Model, 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 model. We're a role model first, last, and in between. And that is our best way to reach our kids, is by being a role model. All right, and then my next slide here. And again, you have access, or you will have access to this through the chat feature. We'll share a link with you, a PDF. We really need to make sure that we're making an effort to contact families, parents, and other stakeholders. And those stakeholders might be their guidance counselors. It could be a probation officer. That could be a service in the community. But we need to make sure that we connect with as many people as we can. Not, what would I say? Not punitively, but to let them know that we're circling the wagons because we care, and we're going to bring them as much support as we can. And then document, 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 document. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see a Google Sheets form. It's pretty generic, but it's just a way to keep track of your documentation. And it's a really, really good idea. Just keep track. Then if someone says, hey, have you had contact with so-and-so? You're like, yeah, I called the family, I talked to grandma, I've met with the caseworker, etc. And just circle those wagons. I have the IEP there. Thank you, Wilma, for sharing that. Starred, because, you know, we really are obligated to read those IEPs, and often we let that slide because we're busy. But we should be reading those IEPs and making sure that we're following them, and even look for the insights on what does make that student tick. The context we've kind of touched on already, but I would say this, like, even when we don't think it'll solve a problem, we still need to contact the stakeholder. Sometimes we know, I serve on the attendance team at our school, and we try to track attendance and improve attendance for our, especially the commonly missed ones. And sometimes we know that it's not going to do us any good to call this parent or grandparent, but we still need to do it as a tracking. Besides, you never know when we're communicating that we do care about that kid, even if it's not making an impact now. The draft folder is your best friend and my best friend. I don't know if you guys do this or not. I often make an email and I don't send it right away. And I leave it in that draft folder for a while because then it gives me a chance to go back and read it again. Sometimes I'll send it to Wilma or Natalie, like, does this sound okay? Like once it's sent, it's too late to take it back. One of the things that I've noticed is sometimes people don't react they don't write objectively. When they write an email, their heart's in it, and that's what comes out rather than objective facts. So make sure that you write with objectivity. And then we need to make sure that we always follow up with the people, even if you don't really want to. If needed, we take some support with us into it. So I'm going to keep moving on because I want to get to the social mercy. And this is where I think the big page comes in. And one of the things I love about working with Wilma and Natalie is this is them. This is our heart as a department. And I'm assuming it is for most people, where we reach these kids with our messages, spoken and unspoken. Doesn't your body language say an awful lot to a kid? You know, even wearing a mask, they can see a lot about us and our care. I believe in you is a huge message. I missed you yesterday. Where were you? Now, sometimes that's harder to say truthfully. But hey, missing them doesn't have to be an emotion. Missing them could be your seat was empty yesterday. So go ahead and tell them they're missed. Make sure if they're hungry that you take care of that. If they're having a bad day, how can I help? Often if I ask kids that, they say there's nothing, but I think they still care. They know that you care. Or if a kid's ready to give up, I know that you can do this. I know that you can get through today. I know that you can handle this. Or, hey, it's really good to see you. And I'd love at this point for you to unmute yourself and tell me, what's your favorite go-to line for touching those kids? Or did I hit everybody's?
One of my go-tos, if they just seem off, is, hey, are you okay? And gives me a chance to, follow up if they offer anything.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anybody else?
I like to ask, is there something I can do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something that you need? And a lot of times they just need to vent for a couple minutes. They've got a lot of homework assignments, or sometimes it's as easy as me moving a test one day. They have 3 tests one day and they need it moved another day. And I'm usually happy to do that. It's just my little way of making things easier for them. And then I know they'll really study for my test. So
That's true. Thank you.
It's a win-win. And it's something that just by talking to them and not being so harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. Anybody else? It's kind of funny because, the people, when you advertise a session like this, like, well, the people that show up are the ones that care already like this, so I know that your heart's in this, and we all know that love is not a feeling, it's a choice. And those tough kids, we love them anyways. It doesn't have to do with how much we like their attitude, their sass, their behavior. And by modeling this, remember I said I was going to say that a lot, model, model, model. What we do is the biggest thing that we can do to reach these kids. It may not impact them for 10 or 15 years, but what if it does then? What if it takes that long? What we say to kids, how we stand when we're talking to them, our tone of voice. Right now, our eyes, because that's all they can see, at least in our school, our eyes are so expressive. And I have to make sure that I make my eyes match what I want the kid to hear and not be betraying what's, like, all right, you've given me that same excuse 12 times. No, I still need to reach out to that kid. Some of you mentioned this earlier in your definition of mercy, but the word forgiveness, that tomorrow is a new day. And when we can let them walk in on the next day and still get another chance, that's huge. It's also very difficult sometimes, and we're going to talk about that on my next screen. Does anybody else have something? Because I don't want to shut you off, but I don't want to dilly-dally either. Okay, on my next screen, we're going to play with a little sliding scale. So I gave you all a little arrow, and you've got a green, yellow, red for, we're in great shape, we're so, not so great. Let me give you a scenario. I want you to know that there are no answers that are easy here, and every situation is unique. I cannot say, okay, every time X happens, you do this. We all know that. I am so thankful I'm not an administrator on a daily basis. I could not make those decisions. Okay, so the question is like, what pushes your button over? So where are you in the sliding scale? So let me give you one. Would we consider this a mild disruption, like move their seat, contact a family member? Or is this more like a referral, etc.? So here we go with some scenarios. Someone cheats on your test. Where does that put you? Are you green, yellow, or red? All right, and I'm going to go ahead and hit show responses because we're just going to keep using this screen. So if you want to go to where you can see the Zoom screen, you can see where everybody is. And we see we've got different trigger points. So isn't this interesting, right? And just like there's not one answer, there's not one teacher pressure gauge that's alike for everybody. So this is cheating, okay? Do we write them up? Is it a case-by-case basis? Is this a contact of family? I'm assuming that all of us are not into the humiliate the child in front of the peers activity. Would everybody agree with me on that one? Got a little head nodding going on. All right, that's good. All right, so let me try another one. How about a disruptive student? Just always got to do something. Moving the desk around, touching other people's stuff. It depends on the day, doesn't it? Sometimes the week, and maybe how often the student is that disruptor. Okay, I'm only going to do a couple more, but I just think it's interesting to see people's sliding scales of responses. What about fighting? Where do you put fighting or inciting fights in other people? Do you have the antagonist that pushes kids to fight? I'm seeing a lot more headed towards that red line. Boy, I had that 1 year there. I imagine Wilma and Natalie remember that I had a crew of kids in Spanish 1 that I didn't know from day to day how many fights we were going to have. Not if we were going to have fights, but how many fights we were going to have. And at that point, I think that that's our limit. And that for me is my limit. So it could be different. But at that point, that's when we need to say to the administrators, you know what, we need a change. Maybe that kid doesn't need to be out of class, but maybe in a different class. And it's hard because we just, as electives, we get shoved everybody. At least I'm assuming that's kind of true for everyone. As an elective teacher, you get everybody left who needs a schedule fill. And they aren't always supportive, but at that point, that's when we need an advocate that says, no, we need this student out of here. Okay. Maybe not one fight, but maybe if they're the constant aggressor in the fights. Let me try one more. How about threats? And I'm talking like an actual meaningful threat. Okay, so we're kind of there, like that's a school policy thing at that point. Now let me ask you a question and I'm going to turn the responses off. Would anybody give a kid another chance after a threat? Would you be able to trust them again? You slide your scale back, and I don't have a right answer. I'm just curious what you think. Would anybody slide their scale back, or would you say, I burned that bridge and we're not going back?
Depends on what they're threatening.
Absolutely, you're right. And whom they're threatening, right? If it's personal about you, that might be a way different situation, right? Excellent. All right, I'm going to move on. And I put this in here because I tend to be of the milder variety. And you know what? There's a difference between being a mercy giver and being a floor mat. Would anybody else feel like sometimes they let themselves be the floor mat instead of the mercy giver? Oh, okay, maybe not. That's interesting. It is okay though to have limits. It's okay to hold to your limits. It doesn't mean you're hating a student. You're not necessarily banishing that student from your presence, like, you know, exiled from the kingdom sort of thing. But it does give you the freedom to say no and to take especially an emotional step back. And we need that. And again, model, model, model. You know, you can still be kind to a student and still be firm. All right, so I'm going to move on. We're doing great. So I'm looking here now. How is a way that you demonstrate social mercy in your classroom? And I'm looking for a for example. For example, I work really well with kids who X. Or, you know, here's a situation. Thank you. I've got someone typing already. How do you exercise or practice social mercy in your classroom? Thank you so much. Good. I love the first two that I'm seeing. I'm seeing make individual decisions and make an effort no matter how small. There you go. Excellent. Get to know them. Ah, there it is. Thank you, Squirrel. The clean slate every day. And that's hard sometimes. There are kids that I think intentionally push buttons. But it is so good. It almost is like a challenge. Can you greet them the next day? And I have to tell you that there have been some kids that made it really, really hard. I had one girl, she would get so mad at me. She said one day, she's like, how can you be happy every day? Like, I'm glad to see you. And she just grumped. But do you know what? She graduated and then she sent me a friend request on Facebook. So I guess I didn't hurt her too badly. You know, she needed someone that could just be positive to see her. And she was going, I mean, when you find out the truth, she was going through a lot. Excellent. I love this. I never hold one day's faults against them. Each day is a new day. I love working with teachers because their hearts are so big. Excellent. Going back to the question, what is the root of what's going on? Great job, everybody. I'm going to move on because I've got a couple minutes and a big topic. What do you think? Would you say with me that you have some colleagues who need our encouragement? Yeah. See, this social mercy isn't just about our students, it's about our colleagues too. Sometimes they need us to be their objective kind of sounding board. And that might be, maybe you just give them a break. Take their kids for a day or take a kid. I have a really challenging study hall right now. They are individually nice kids. They just antagonize each other. But you know what I found? I split a couple of them into another room and they were all much happier. They just needed a break from each other. And now when they come by, they're pleasant when they say hello. And as I bring them back in one by one and they come back into the classroom, they've got their emotions under control. Teachers need that too. Sometimes we need to let the teachers vent. And this is hard. We want to solve people's problems. If a teacher starts complaining, we want to fix it. And sometimes all they need is just to vent. And so we need to give them that right to vent without solving their problems. But if you see that they're ready, help them consider some options. Don't tell them the way to go, but give them some options to think about. Go with them, be their advocate if they need to talk to administration. And then be really careful that you make sure that you bring them up and that they don't bring you down. Because they can not intentionally bring you down, but they can bring you down. So model, model, model for your colleagues. They need your encouragement. Okay, I'm going to move on because we're almost out of time. And I have, is there a takeaway, a strategy, a perspective, or a word of advice you have as we get ready to wrap up here? Is there a valuable takeaway, a strategy, perspective? Like, how do we take message of compassion and mercy to our kids? Great. You're right. We don't know what they're really going through. Mhm. Great one. Thank you. Yep. Model, model, model. I don't know if that's someone else's motto too, or just you're quoting me, but either way, model, 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 right? Starts one day and we're almost done. I love it. Thank you so much. There's one in the chat as well, if you want to open that up and look, or a couple. And then I'm going to advance and hit here. As we leave, why do this today? Because in our era, I think social mercy is needed. I appreciate you coming, and it's nice to remember that we're not alone. I want to encourage you to do what is right or just on a one-by-one, case-by-case, student-by-student basis. There is not one answer. If there were, like, teaching would be a whole lot easier, wouldn't it be? Like, just pull out the file card, answer the question. But it's not that way. Love mercy, whether it's being given to you or whether you're giving it or you see it being given. Just enjoy the moment. Sometimes we just get angry because we don't know what's going on, but that kid got away with something. No, maybe that kid was shown mercy. And always, always, always walk humbly. We are not experts. We're not pros, and we're going to get it wrong. I can't even tell you how many things I've gotten wrong this school year. And I'm assuming some of you have made some mistakes already as well. So thank you. I appreciate your time. I want to encourage you to feel free to connect with me. I'm going to show you that in my slides, I have my personal professional mission statement, which you can read later if you'd like. It's in that PDF. I wrote that for a grad class, and it's just stuck with me. And then I have, oh, did I skip my reading resources? Evidently, I've deleted a page. I had some recommended reading for you, but they're not there anymore. But that's okay, because we're out of time and that's not something I can worry about. So thank you for your time. If you have any final questions or comments, feel free. We've got probably about a minute and a half. All right. Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.
On behalf of PSMLA, we want to thank everyone for attending the session with Barb and her team from Crawford Central School, Central High School. We welcome and encourage your feedback on our session. Please use the link in the PDF program or found in the chat, except for John. I don't know if you've put it up in the chat yet. He's doing that as I'm speaking. The recording of the session will be available to conference registrants after the event. As a reminder for teachers in Pennsylvania, in order to qualify the session for Act 48 credits, you must complete the Act 48 reflection form. You can find it again in the PDF program. At the bottom of the page of the PDF program, you can click on the link, and the forms need to be completed within 72 hours of this session. Thank you and enjoy. Well, this was the last session of the conference, and I invite you all to attend the final keynote, which is by I forget her first name, but Fetterman. Giselle Fetterman, speaking to us. That should be exciting. It starts at 2 o'clock. And again, use the link in the program. So thank you to the presenters, especially Barb, who carried the session, but to the team to prepare the session.
And I want to
thank you all for attending.
We will be recognizing our awardees for this year and last year.
And Barb was an awardee for last year.
Yes,
so we will see her again.
Yes, she was our Teacher of the Year 2020.
Okay, that's great. And so John, did you put it in the chat, the links?
Yes, I have the links there at the top, 143. I can put them back again.
Yeah, well, they're there. I see them now. So anybody who needs it, And then I will stop the recording now. Let me see, get back to my screen here. Stop the recording. Stop.